So the other concept that transfer studies talks about when we're talking about the hugging strategies are the bridging strategies. And these tend to be more conceptual connections. So often they're more cerebral, less experiential, about generalizing and reflecting and the acts of synthesis. So how do you then, with your students, move to that more intellectualizing or reflective part of teaching for transfer?
Well, so just as I was saying, we started this semester by talking about how it's impossible to translate, basically, that we can't really see what Virgil was saying by reading, um, somebody's translation into English, where any translator has to make decisions about what stays and what goes. And one thing I didn't realize is that the kinds of assignments that I'm asking my students to do are translation. And I think that that fits in perfectly with this idea of bridging. I mean, it's the way to convey something from one thing to another. That's what translation means, which is like what bridges do also. um, and so um, one kind of thing that I haven't really done too much this semester, but it's the sort of assignment that I always like to do is to take a particular translation and put it into another genre. So like rewrite a letter that, where Pliny is rebuffing a friend who stood him up as a text message or as an email, or to, restate an argument that Socrates is giving as a Twitter rant or whatever those long Twitter things are called. Maybe they're not called Twitter rants. This semester, though, what I've done that I really like, and I think the students like it too, is to use images. So I'll ask them to do assignments where they are to find an image that depicts a character or shows a landscape or perhaps shows some sort of emotional quality that a reading evokes. And those kinds of assignments, so whenever I give them information, when I'm introducing an author or something, I always include some sort of visual element with that. And that can be, a bust of the author or a landscape or any number of things, really. Then with the assignments that we do in class together, we'll talk about why images work, what makes them line up with the reading, and where it's not quite so good, but still, what it gives us in relation to that reading. And then where this goes is toward a project where instead of writing papers in this class, I agreed to do an Adobe Creative Cloud thing, so got sort of locked in. I had huge plans. They were going to do a podcast and make a zine, but it's basically become only just using Adobe Spark, which is easy to use and create some really lovely web pages. It's hard to make them bad or ugly, which is important to me. I like beauty. But these asking the students to incorporate images in those projects, I think is, I don't know, I think it's exciting because you get to look at the students having made a negotiation with a concept. And it gives me a different view of how they're understanding the text than by reading a block of their own writing. And it's so, when we're talking about projects like the effect of the audience or the effect on the audience of Caesar's third-person narration of his military activities, the kinds of images that are included in that kind of discussion that a student is bringing forward from their observations of a text are informative and illustrative of their own thoughts on the reading. challenging. The students will say in their writer's memos that that finding the right images is definitely a challenge, but it's fun, and it helps them focus on the text, on what it is, in the same way that a translator has to, what it is that they want to bring forward, and what they think can just be left aside.
So one of the things you were just talking about was your use of writer's memos as a project that you have your students do. And of course, a lot of teachers in writing studies make use of those because they are spaces of synthesis and reflection. Can you say a little bit about how you use writer's memos in your courses?
Sure. I have the students submit a writer's memo with every project that we do, and in those memos, I ask them to sort of go through the process that they used in creating the project, and to be specific about the challenges that they faced. And with this semester, especially when I've incorporated this image-heavy idea, those comments are largely about the challenges of finding appropriate images, which I think is exactly the right thing to be happening. And then I ask them also to tell me what. Let's see. I don't word it like what would you do better, or maybe I do, but not in a confrontational kind of, like, what, I don't know. Yeah. What would you do to improve this if you were going to spend more time on it? How would you improve? And I think that's about it for those memos.
So what do students typically say? Are they saying that you see in their project as well? Like it seems like they know where their projects are weak at this draft stage, or are they totally off the mark in their self-assessment?
I think that the ones who are thorough and honest in those, and really reflecting instead of just doing the motions of reflecting, are right on. It's so easy to say I would proofread it again, which would be good always. It's always good to proofread something again. But yeah, it sort of depends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had the same experience. I think there's students who go for the low-hanging fruit. So they'll mention grammar or I should do more research. And it's like, well, we could all proofread and do more research. But it's the ones who really realize or say, I don't think I really did this well, but as a teacher, I think, well, you're right, you didn't, but now I know you did it, right? And that tells me this is something we both agree you could work on. It's not like you didn't know, it's not. So there must be something missing in how you apply the concept, right? So it's not that you didn't know, it's you didn't know how to do it. And those to me are very different places.
Right. And one of my favorite kinds of comments to get here is that I would do a different topic. I didn't know as much about this, so that really shows that they are learning as they're creating these projects, and fitting their topic into a frame helps them understand what it is better, and gives them ideas for what a better project would look like, or what a better question would be to ask about a text. Which is
we don't
the right thing.
We don't. I think we forget that we do not have time to think things through, and we don't necessarily have syllabi or curricula that allow students to fail without failing. And I think anyone who's ever done archival research or textual analysis or artistic analysis knows that it's not until you get deep into it that you know if you even have anything worth talking about. And so I think a lot of times our students they get stuck. They work 2 weeks on something and then there's nothing there to have talked about, but now they face a deadline, right? And I think that's a real hard thing in the humanities generally. Is the way in which we go about a project. And it's hard in 15 weeks to say, oh, okay, fine, start over. And the students are like, whoa, I can't start over. So I think I've found the writer's memos useful for letting the students work through their frustration, right? That this isn't the project I wanted to do. It didn't go where I thought it was going to go, but we only have the time we have. So
Mhm.
it's to me it's really powerful.
It's also been really useful, just recently with one of these projects, the writer's memo said, uh, I didn't have access to a laptop. I did everything on my phone, which really made me go back and look at that project and appreciate it in a new way. It helped give me important context
Mm.
for the work. So that's another benefit of these memos.